reality that it is the offseason is beginning to set in Philadelphia as the Phillies start to turn a page and answer some big picture questions about the future of the team. Near the top of the list for most difficult is what is the future of Ranger Suarez as he begins to eye his free agent earnings and takes a look around the league to get what his worth is. Now, for Ranger directly, I'll start this by saying I'm a Ranger Suarez guy. That is one of my favorite athletes in all of Philadelphia sports. That I love the cool, calm, and collected nature that he carries himself with. I love that when it is a big moment, you are not increasing that guy's heart rate, raising his nerves, getting him to look like anything but the best version of himself. He's the best fielding pitcher that I've seen in my entire life. I mean, if we're talking about Ranger Suarez was on the mound for that final pitch rather than Orion Kirking, we have a completely different tune about this Phillies season, but it was Ranger that was even a reason why they were in that spot in the first place, and it's going to absolutely break my heart when this dude does walk out of Philadelphia this offseason. Now, the reason that I say that right here is I started to prep for this video and did want to pull up. We know how talented this guy is, that we're not exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating when I say this is one of the best postseason pitchers ever. His postseason ERA in 2022, a 1.23 ERA across 14.2 innings pitched. In 2023, a 1.93 ERA across 18.2 innings pitched. In 2024, not a single earned run allowed across his 4.1 innings pitched. Of course, is a little brief there. And then this year, pitched 5 innings, a 1.80 ERA, just that one swing that he did let up to ultimately let the corridor open a little bit there. To speak about him on the regular season as a whole, he pitched in 26 games for this Phillies team this year, 157.1 innings, allowed 154 hits while striking out 151, a 3.20 ERA, a 1.220 whip, that he did have a little bit of a blip mid-season that inflated these numbers in a major way, but Ranger Suarez is that dude. And unfortunately, the rest of the MLB seems to be aware of that as well. As when I began to prep for this video, pulling up the best free agents in baseball, trying to get a feel for what his market is going to look like. And I do think Ranger Suarez is one of the more unique players to try and strike up exactly what his market is. That it is true. He is one of the historically best postseason pitchers. It's also true he's missed time in back-to-back years with a back issue. And it's also true that his velocity is dipping at this stage of the game. Now, in general, that is a huge red flag for a pitcher. With Ranger Suarez, I kind of don't look at it that way, but I do think this is a guy who it's only become more impressive to me that like his average miles per hour down like 2 miles per hour from 2 seasons ago, which is a big deal from a pitching standpoint. But Ranger's never been a guy dependent on, the rate of speed of his pitches. It is pitchability. It is artful the way that he can build up an overall attack of the plate, setting up different pitches, getting guys with off-speed stuff. That is who Ranger Suarez is. Now, when I did dive into this list of the best free agents in baseball, crushed my heart a little bit to see Ranger Suarez come in at number 7, this being from MLBRumors.com. And what it writes about Ranger here: though not as durable as Valdez has been, Suarez pitches deep into games and keeps runs off the board just like his fellow southpaw, Valdez being one spot ahead of him in these rankings. He's allowed 5 runs in 6 1/3 inning start just this afternoon. Not sure when this was written. One of the worst outings of the year, but still carries a 2.94 ERA in 107 frames. So this being a midseason article here. He averaged 5 1/3 innings per start back in 2022, jumped to about 5 2/3 innings in 23-24, and is up to nearly 6 1/3 innings per appearance in 2025. Suarez has been consistently good along the way, with roughly average strikeout rates, good command, and well above average grounder rates. In many ways, he's a light version of Valdez. He's fanned 21.8% of opponents since 2022, issued walks at a 7.8% clip, and turned in a 51.5% ground ball rate. Back, hamstring, and elbow injuries have limited his workload in that time, keeping him to 538 innings of regular season work. And it continues on. That 2025 season has been Suarez's best in terms of results. It's also been his second straight season with notable time missed due to a back injury. However, Suarez opened the season on the injured list due to lower back pain and wound up missing more than a month. His lower back also cost him a month in 2024 and 2 weeks in 2022. He's an immensely talented pitcher, but 3 IL stints for his lower back in a span of 4 years isn't ideal, especially since he's had other injuries mixed in, most notably a 2023 elbow strain that cost him 6+ weeks. Suarez doesn't throw as hard as Valdez, sitting at a career low 90.2 miles per hour with his sinker this season. The declining velocity and recent troubles with back injuries are limiting factors, but Suarez is a steady number 3 starter who will pitch nearly all of next season at age 30. There's no reason he shouldn't handily top Eduardo Rodriguez's 4-year, $80 million contract and a 5-year deal that pushes up to closer to Kevin Gausman / Robbie Ray territory of 110 to 115 million feels attainable. And those are not numbers whatsoever that I was hoping to see attached to Ranger Suarez. Now, the bigger question here, or where I think the Phillies will go from this direction, it is always important to note with these specific conversations, both sides have different priorities. And it is nice that we see some of the good quotes, such as this from Ranger, which warmed my heart over this year, saying, quote, "This is my childhood club. All I think about is staying here." And I do think that's true. I think in his heart, like, Ranger would prefer for things to be in Philadelphia, but he would prefer things to be in Philadelphia for the right price. And that's totally respectable and understandable here. We also know that just last offseason, he added Scott Boras as his agent, who sends a clear message to organizations that when you bring in Scott Boras to handle these sort of talks, that is we are shaking down people for every penny. We are maximizing your market, and that is what my job is. That was Scott Boras speaking to Ranger Suarez immediately after the game that he did pitch in the postseason here. Of Ranger Suarez looking like one of the best pitchers in baseball because that's how he was at that very moment. Now, when we're speaking about this from the Phillies perspective, we first got to tie in what's the rest of the pitching staff look like. And I do think that this is where things ultimately tie in. So to pull things up here, and we're looking at the contracts, of course, Aaron Nola on the books until 2030. We'll see if that is for better or for worse after how this season went, but nonetheless, that decision has been made. Zack Wheeler has been very open on he's got 2 more years in him, and then he's walking away. And by the way, Zack Wheeler, the second highest paid player in all of baseball right now, only behind Juan Soto for what he's going to be making next season. Then there is Taijuan Walker. Don't think we really got to worry about that one too much. He's either here or he's not. He'll probably be around. He'll probably be in the bullpen. Nothing but love to Taijuan, but he's just not a guy that you're counting on as one of the 5 starters. Christopher Sanchez is absolutely the guy you are and will likely be the ace at the start of next season as Wheeler continues to recover. And by the way, $3.5 million for Christopher Sanchez is an absolute bargain based on what he's giving you on the field. So we're talking about Sanchez, we're talking about Wheeler, and we're talking about Nola, and it will be interesting to see what Wheeler's sort of timeline is when he does ultimately recover from the deep vein thrombosis and everything else that he's dealing with the blood clot issues. It's tough to fully articulate because it is not as simple as just an injury in the way that we would like. Then there's Jesus Luzardo, who is a guy who stepped up to the moment and I think was traded for as essentially the Ranger Suarez replacement. That was the biggest addition of last offseason. Shout out to Luzardo, who made the most of his opportunity in the playoffs, did deliver for this Phillies team. But he also shares a lot of characteristics similar to Ranger. We're talking about left-handers. We're talking about guys who do fill a similar workload, who you can theoretically sort of shift up and down in their role, whether it is a bullpen sort of role in the postseason. We've seen each of these guys pitch in both situations. Luzardo being a starting pitcher for the Phillies for stretches, also coming out of the bullpen here. And the bigger question is really the level of faith that the Phillies organization has in Andrew Painter. Now, it was a pretty nightmare season for Painter. And the biggest mistake that I think the Phillies did make was by putting expectations on this kid. It is understandable that he's not going to look like the best version of himself less than 2 years removed from Tommy John surgery. That he's a young kid, he's going up levels, he's pitching to more talented hitters than he has throughout the entirety of his life and dealing with the physical repercussions of what that surgery does. But the facts are still the facts. The level of performance that he put on the field this year, we're not up to the standard of what needs to be the case for him to be a legitimate MLB pitcher. With that in mind, does that change next year? Does another year of, getting the reps in, getting healthier, looking like closer to the best version of yourself, is that a guy that you can count on to be a part of the MLB rotation? I'm not talking AAA. I'm not talking AA. I do believe that Andrew Painter is talented, but is he MLB talented right now? That is the question that they need to ultimately address. If you don't have certainty about that, I think you need to find a way to dig deep in those pockets and pay Ranger Suarez. And to be perfectly honest, I sort of feel that even if you do believe in Painter like that, you can never have too much pitching, man. Now, I understand the Phillies are a team that is throwing money around. That as of this year, they had the third largest payroll in all of baseball year. This is not a team skimping out. They want to contend for a World Series. It just feels to me like bad practice if you let this dude walk out of the organization. This is a homegrown talent, a dude that you signed for pennies on the dollar based on what he's about to get in free agency here. He's been everything you could have hoped for and more in Philadelphia. And what is most valuable about Ranger Suarez to me is you don't see very many pitchers that are this talented and this versatile. That typically pitchers are creatures of habit. They want to pitch every 5th day. They want to go through their routines there. Ranger Suarez does not matter, man. You want to pitch out of the bullpen. You want him to pitch on short rest. You can, start with Aaron Nola, throw him in the 3rd inning, whatever you want him to do, he's just going to show up and do it. That's seriously, this dude's heart rate does not get raised. It could be the most tense moment in the world. Ranger Suarez still just rock solid and steady. That's who he is. And that's why that's not a guy that I want to leave this organization. To be completely honest, I think there's very little chance of the Phillies keeping him. But I do think, whether it's a team like the Padres, who knows who it's going to be that's going to come in and empty up the brink truck. But it does feel that this is going to get pushed to a level where the Phillies simply can't match that. It would break my heart if it ends up on a team in which we can't be Ranger Suarez fans. But I do hope, for the sake of everyone here, that it's on, just kind of a middle of nowhere team that we can root for Ranger whenever those opportunities do come around. If it's on a team like the Dodgers or the Mets or something like that, it will completely suck if that is the case. But I do think the writing is on the wall for the future of Ranger Suarez in Philadelphia. Would love to be wrong, and if you do have that case for me in the comments, make sure you're ripping out below. We'll see what that price point looks like, and I think this is going to be a money talks kind of negotiation where it is purely about the bottom line. That is why he brought in Scott Boras. That is why he's on a stretch of some of the best seasons of his career. And we'll see how the cards do fall here. The Phillies certainly do have their insurance policy packed. They've got their backup plan in place. That they've added Luzardo. Painter is the question mark here. We'll see what ultimately the answers to the question are. But all these names that we do rip down from the free agency standpoint, the impending free agents for this Phillies team, I do think Ranger Suarez is by far the least likely that is back. And that does really suck that is the case. So let me know what you guys think in the comments here, but that is where my mind is at on this situation. All love the Ranger and would love to be wrong about this, but I do think that this is going to be a situation where he walks away for a massive contract in free agency. And shout out to Ranger Suarez for earning every penny of that while still playing in Philadelphia. Shout out to you guys for watching this video here and getting ready to be involved in what it will be a hectic offseason of Phillies baseball. There are a lot of decisions still to be faced with this team. We will see what ultimately comes of all of them and be breaking things down right here on Phillies Digest. So appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button as we're going nowhere this offseason. We're still going to be around, still going to be ripping out videos and dropping comment just about on the daily there. So make sure you're tapping in. The best way by doing so is by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like below, giving your thoughts in the comments, and I'll be back. Talk with you next time. Peace.